So what's going on today? I'm here with Aaron Maté. So you know what's happening in Congress right now. So they can't elect a speaker because there's a handful of right-wing Republicans that have demands, and they're asking for something for their vote. And what they're doing is they're proving this show right. This show, the idea which came from Malcolm Fleishner, he's the one who pointed out that the squad, because the victory of the Democrats in Congress was so narrow, so small, that they could demand things, and Nancy Pelosi couldn't get elected without their vote, so then they could demand things from her for their vote. This is exact what the Matt Gaetz and the right wing is doing right now. The Freedom Caucus is doing right now to Kevin McCarthy. And so the Republicans are currently doing what I was told could not be done and was performative. They are extracting concessions for their vote from Speaker, or as AOC calls it, violence. Okay. So watching the force to vote strategy work real time for the Republicans after the squad's excuses for not doing it turned out to be lies, it's something special. Now, even MSNBC has noticed this, so they're going to talk about it. Watch this.
The reality for Kevin McCarthy is Pelosi's nightmare back from 2019, as I'm sure you'll remember. She was, of course, elected as House Speaker when Democrats took back control, but progressives, newly elected progressives, led by folks like Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, were openly skeptical of Pelosi's leadership, whether she should be Speaker at that time, whether it was time for generational change, and whether they would vote against her. AOC actually voted for her at that time, and Republicans booed her on the House floor for doing so. But all of this sort of shows that while Pelosi was elected Speaker at a time of these sort of left-wing rebels, that so-called squad never ended up being the threat to the Democratic Party that these right-wing rebels are ending up being to McCarthy and the larger Republican Party. And we're seeing that play out in real time yesterday with this Speaker fight, and we're going to see this continue as they try to govern through the 118th Congress.
So it looks like the right wing of the Republican Party is going to do exactly what we all thought and expected that the left wing of the Democratic Party would do, meaning the Justice Democrats, the squad, but they never did do it. And why did we think they would do it? Why did we think that they would do what the right wing is doing right now? Well, because they said they would. So here we go. Here's AOC when she was trying to get your vote.
We can't even get a floor vote on Medicare for all. Not even a floor vote that gets voted down. We can't even get a vote on it.
Oh, I thought we had her in here calling it it stopped a little quick. We had her calling the Democratic Party a center-right party. Fuck, we stopped that clip too quickly. But here she goes. She says it again here.
What the Bronx and Queens needs is Medicare for all. We can do it now. It takes political courage. Start bringing the ruckus on the Democratic Party. That is our job. It's great that everyone thinks these issues are important. We need to make them urgent. This country has only ever changed for the better by groups of people that were willing to put everything on the line for a better future.
Now, she revealed she wasn't willing to do that, nor is anybody in the Democratic Party, including Bernie Sanders, who claims he's not in the Democratic Party, but he's the biggest water carrier there is for corporatism and war. So, Brianna Joy Gray was Bernie Sanders' press secretary when he ran for president last time. And I think she's seen the light. And so now she was forced to vote, and she's going to explain it in a way that's better than me, right? Because, you know, I'm a pothead comedian and a C student, and I'm sure she went to Harvard or something like that. She's really smarty pants. And so she's got it together, and let's just listen to it, and we'll stop and start it. But she really nails it. Here we go.
Let me explain. In 2020, the situation was reversed. Democrats had a small majority in the House, such that a handful of progressives, squad members alone, had enough votes to hold up Nancy Pelosi's nomination to lead the House. There were plenty of reasons, by the way, to do so. For one, AOC had previously gestured to the fact that she found it incredible that Pelosi had never faced a real speakership challenge in all her years. Moreover, we were at the start of a COVID pandemic and at the tail end of a progressive presidential campaign that delivered unprecedented public support for Medicare for all, along with other progressive policies. Did Bernie's loss mean that the movement representing a majority of Americans was supposed to die? And during a pandemic at that. Since Trump was still president, Democrats were still pretending to care about COVID deaths. And before the vaccines, when even young and healthy people were finding themselves hospitalized or even dying from COVID, there was genuine energy around using the public health crisis as a springboard for improving our public health system, which, by the way, is the most expensive in the world, despite yielding worse results than peer nations. Disgruntled progressives who made up a significant part of the Democratic Party base had dutifully voted for Biden, despite warnings from folks like myself who said that doing so without establishing some conditions would mean that Biden would ultimately betray most, if not all, of his campaign promises. And in the weeks after the election, progressive YouTube Politico and comedian Jimmy Dore floated a simple idea to get something in return for those very progressive voters. An idea, in fact, that he gleaned from the DSA's own handbook. That is, you guessed it, force the vote. Progressive squad members could leverage their speakership vote to extract concessions from Nancy Pelosi. Now, unlike Republicans now, the left's asks were to be substantive, not just procedural. One key ask was a vote on Medicare for All, which was intended to keep the fight alive and draw contrast between Democrats' claims that they want to improve health care for Americans and the fact that they repeatedly kill Medicare for All legislation as quickly as they receive money from the pharmaceutical industry. If you want to understand why the vote for Medicare for All was such an important ask, just look at what's happened over the last 2 years. Look at how California, with its Democratic supermajority legislature, killed a statewide Medicare for All bill, or consider how silent all of the squad members have been about Medicare for All since the end of the Bernie campaign. Did 68,000 people a year stop dying from a lack of health insurance, or did it just become uncool to talk about it now that we're outside of a fundraising cycle? Now, some of us, fearful that exactly this would happen, rallied over the holidays in 2020, staffing phone trees and calling progressive Congress members furiously about the plan, and even planning rallies. As left media figures debated the merits of the plan, people like David Sirota offered constructive additions to the ask, including a suggestion that Pelosi be forced to oust corporate Democrat Richie Neal from the Ways and Means Committee, where he was poised to stop progress on health care reform.
And then David Sirota then came on this show and bullshitted that Kevin McCarthy could become speaker and ran interference for the squad. But anyway.
What should be clear is the specifics of the ask were much less important than the following fact. Nancy Pelosi was obviously an enemy to the left and should not have been voted for without gaining something significant in return. After AOC's first notable day in Congress, during which she protested with climate activists in Pelosi's office, the longtime speaker made quick work of bullying the squad members into submission. An iron fist and a Gucci glove is how Politico described Pelosi once. And over the course of their first 2 years in Congress, the squad members largely submitted to said fist. But here was an opportunity to draw attention to the corruption that paid for that proverbial Gucci glove. The squad members could have demanded important committee assignments. As the current rebel Republicans have done, they could have forced a vote on banning stock trading by Congress members. After all, Pelosi's personal wealth has ballooned during her decades in office, widely out of proportion to her congressional salary. This is a woman who famously defended congressional stock trading despite the clear conflict of interest and insider knowledge Congress members possess. This is a woman who just presided over the quiet death of a bill to end congressional stock trading, one that was arguably designed to fail in the first place. But instead of choosing that moment to fight, to highlight the corruption of the Democratic Party, and to lead a genuine populist movement that stood a chance of waking people up to the limitations of the two-party duopoly, something curious happened. A call seemed to go out to leading figures in the progressive media that they should drop force the vote. Although I first heard of the idea from Sam Cedar, host of the YouTube show Majority Report, who said he supported Jimmy Dore's idea despite having a long-standing feud with Jimmy. He quickly...
Okay, there's no feud that involves two people. There's just one guy who's jealous of me who talks about me constantly. It's not a feud. Okay.
Changed his tune, alluding to a call he'd received that discouraged this approach. A call from whom? We could only guess. The legacy left media all quickly turned against the idea, with large accounts like the Young Turks, Majority Report, and others spreading outright misinformation about the risks of what might happen if the squad declined to vote for Nancy Pelosi. They repeatedly claimed, wrongly, that Kevin McCarthy would become Speaker of the House by default. Of course, as we all saw yesterday and today, that was never true.
That was never true. So let's just recap real quick. What she just said there is that there was a phone call that went out to people who were previously on board for this. People with MSNBC contracts, people who take big corporate donor money like at the Young Turks, people like that were on board for this. And then a phone call went out. We don't know who made that phone call. Said, you can't go along with this. And what were they promised? What did those people get for going against this thing that everybody agrees is a good idea, from AOC to the DSA to everybody, for even Nancy Pelosi for a generation ago said that when she got into Congress, she wanted to have a vote for Medicare for all on the floor. So what was that phone call? So that's the first thing. And the second thing is they immediately all started lying in the same way, saying that Kevin McCarthy could become speaker and that this was a bad strategy and that they could use this tactic of forcing a vote for another thing like $15 minimum wage, which they never did. So those are the two things I just wanted to point out. That's a very, very big. There was a phone call. Who's making the phone call that's controlling the quote unquote progressive YouTube? And then all the people who follow the Young Turks go along with that, even though they didn't get that phone call and they're not getting anything for it.
Well, one thing this select group has gotten is access, right? So by defending the squad against progressive critics over forced to vote, they've maintained their access. And that's why the squad only gives, when it speaks to progressive media, only speaks to a very, very, very small number of people.
Ryan Grimm would be pretty much it over at The Intercept. And that's going to be coming up.
Yeah, and who never challenged them.
And that's why.
For example, on issues like funding the Ukraine proxy war.
That's right.
There's no serious challenge of them over that.
No. Or this.
Hakeem Jeffries is not magically Speaker of the House despite earning more votes in the first count than McCarthy did yesterday. You need a majority of the House, not just a bare majority, to be Speaker. And yet the lie was so pervasive that Pramila Jayapal herself lied directly to former Rising host Ryan Grimm's face when he asked her during an interview why she voted for Nancy Pelosi without demanding real concessions.
No, there were some pundits and left-wing media personalities ahead of this vote who were urging the CPC to use the vote for Speaker as leverage to extract a floor vote on Medicare for all.
That would be me. That would be us here at the Jimmy Dore Show. That's who he's referring to.
Why didn't the CPC end up taking that particular route?
And the CPC stands for the Congressional Progressive Caucus. Why didn't you guys do that?
Well, I'm sympathetic, obviously, as the lead sponsor of the bill, to people who are frustrated that we have not moved to a single-payer system yet. But the reality is that this is a very slim margin. The vote for Speaker was between Kevin McCarthy and Nancy Pelosi.
No, it wasn't. So that's a lie. So she's lying right there. And why is she lying right there to a guy who's the D.C. bureau chief of The Intercept? Why would she think she could get away with that lie? Because she could. Because then that guy, Ryan Grimm, the host of Rising, Crystal Ball, Sagar and Jetty, they hired him. He's a host at their network because they knew that he wouldn't push back on her lie, even though he knew it was a lie, because they're all together. Ryan Grimm got that phone call too, and they're all lying together. That's why. Well, she's going to talk about it a little bit.
And throwing the entire chamber into chaos would have been very detrimental for the Electoral College vote and everything else.
I later confronted Ryan about his failure to push back against Jayapal's claim on my podcast, and we had a constructive conversation about how things could have been handled differently, but...
They did not have a constructive conversation about that. Ryan lied, and she let him off the hook. But he lied. He pretended that he didn't that word he said I wasn't ready. It didn't trigger me, that word, when she said that McCarthy could become Speaker, because he wasn't following it closely. That was a lie. That's him just lying. Okay.
Squad members rarely open themselves up to questioning from anyone in progressive media outside of Ryan Grimm at The Intercept. That missed opportunity was one that carried the lie that Kevin McCarthy could become Speaker if Democrats force the vote far and wide. Sam Cedar was one of the most vocal opponents to force the vote. After, of course, he supported it. And following a 3-hour debate with me on my podcast, it was incredibly demoralizing to hear that he did not understand the basic facts of how the congressional vote even worked. I recommend everyone go and listen to that debate at Bad Faith if you haven't watched it already. Now, all of this was as obvious as the nose on my face 2 years ago. But major left media figures like Sam have been loud and wrong about this for years without any apology. This issue became the source of a major fissure in left politics. For years, I've been the subject of personal attacks from opponents of force the vote. Sam, for one, argued after a debate, which ended on a friendly note, that I, quote, yelled at him for 3 hours, while Cenk Uygur referred to me as a fake leftist just 6 months or so ago, in part because of my advocacy for force the vote and my perceived alliance with Jimmy Dore, who shared my support of this particular tactic. Now, of course, both the left media and mainstream media are perfectly clear on how all this works now that there's no pressure on progressives to actually be adversarial to the Democratic Party, outside, of course, wearing tax the rich sweatshirts. Now they get it. But while Democrats are bending over backward to pretend that the force the vote strategy is emblematic of a Republican Party in disarray, what this moment really shows is how fully controlled by the corporate Democratic Party progressive Democrats really are. What the rogue Republicans are fighting for now is not what I would have asked for, But the point is that progressives in 2021 could have asked for anything.
And they asked for nothing.
My former colleague Ryan Grimm, along with progressives like AOC and Pramila Jayapal, bragged back then about securing relatively minor procedural changes like PAYGO exemptions. They lauded these gains so much, you would have thought that PAYGO was Esperanto for student debt cancellation, a $15 minimum wage, or a classic Oprah car giveaway. In 2021, these progressives celebrated wins much smaller than the wins already secured by the Republican holdouts this week. But now they're taking smug selfies from the House floor, as though McCarthy's concessions aren't proof that they gave up an enormous amount of leverage without a fight 2 years ago.
So that is, to me, first of all, she's doing an amazing job here. She's doing a better job than I could do. So what that is the most amazing thing to me, that they're pretending that what's happening with the Republican Party makes somehow the right wing of the Republican Party look bad and them look good because they didn't do this. It's the exact opposite. What it shows is that there is no difference between the parties, that there is no point in voting for progressives inside the Democratic Party, like Shama Sawant says, and that it's all theater and stupid, and that they don't care. They're laughing in your face. Jamal Bowman is laughing in your face as he votes for Israel and for Hakeem Jeffries as their leader. He's laughing in your face. Okay.
And for what? What happened after they decided to play the game and make nice with Mama Bear? AOC tweeted that she wouldn't be forcing the vote because she was negotiating on the inside for committee appointments and was reserving leverage to fight for a $15 minimum wage. But how did that go, AOC? Biden and the corporate Dems killed the $15 minimum wage when Schumer stripped it from must-pass COVID legislation that only needed a bare majority to pass, converting a 51-vote issue into a filibuster-proof vote. And it was reported that Pramila Jayapal whipped votes to make sure the progressives didn't threaten to vote down the COVID relief bill in protest. I guess that sort of move is only allowed if you're Manchin or Sinema fighting for corporations, not progressives fighting for the people. Moreover, squad members ended up with even worse committee assignments than they'd had the previous year. Katie Porter was kicked off the Financial Services Committee, reportedly because her popular whiteboard presentations exposing corporate corruption made it tougher for Committee Chair Maxine Waters to do the real work of the Financial Services Committee. That is, fundraising from Wall Street. And this is what is so absolutely disappointing about.
And they said nothing about it. When Katie Porter got kicked off that committee, she didn't say a goddamn thing. Why? Because she's a good girl and she takes orders from the corporatists inside the Democratic Party. That's why. Did you even know about that? That happened to her? No, you didn't. You know why? Because she didn't want you to know about it, because she is a spineless, nutless wonder on the left who's not really on the left, because she is supporting a corrupt corporate party that is pro-war and an enemy of the worker. That's what she's doing. And that's why she didn't let you know that. And that's why she didn't try to get anything for her vote from Nancy Pelosi. And that's why it's a fool's errand to vote for progressives inside the Democratic Party.
Progressives. It's why so many people who were once willing to fight with Bernie are no longer willing to engage in electoral politics at all. It has become clear that as performative and goofy as some of the right posturing is right now, people like Matt Gaetz are still willing to demonstrate more fight against the establishment of their own party than squad members who once claimed that they'd rather be one-term Congress members than forego their principles. Take a listen.
Today, humble to a fault, maybe the right person for the job of Speaker of the House isn't someone who wants it so bad. Maybe the right person for the job of Speaker of the House isn't someone who has sold shares of themselves for more than a decade to get it. Maybe Jim Jordan is the right person for Speaker of the House because he is not beholden to the lobbyists and special interests who have corrupted this place and corrupted this nation under the leadership of both Republicans and Democrats.
Now, Matt Gaetz was talking about Kevin McCarthy there, but he easily could have been talking about Nancy Pelosi. The difference is you won't hear a peep out of the squad about Nancy Pelosi's corruption, her unpopularity, or the fact that after a 30-year reign, she's allowed to choose her own successor without any real contest occurring whatsoever, even from the progressive flank.
Nancy Pelosi less popular than Trump. Just keep that in mind. Okay. And the squad doesn't say shit about her.
We're learning today that force the vote works. It comes with media backlash, but it is in fact an effective mechanism that can be used to get a whole range of important concessions and deliver for the people, if people choose. That being the case, every single person who opposed it in 2021 has to answer the question, was bending the knee really worth it? So I know that's a lot, Robbie, but this is my bugaboo, and it is really.
It is my bugaboo also. And she was right. And I just want to remind the people who lied about this. And why were they lying? They were lying to you, the activist, the person who wants Medicare, the person that they want you to vote for. He was lying to them. He was telling you that McCarthy could become speaker. And he can't even become speaker now when they control the goddamn Congress.
If he was right, then Hakeem Jeffries would be speaker right now.
Right now, he'd be speaker. Right now.
You think anyone's going to at least acknowledge that they were wrong on that? These people never acknowledge that they're wrong.
No, they would have never acknowledged that they were wrong on Russiagate. They never acknowledged they were wrong on Syria. They never acknowledged they were wrong when McCarthy smeared you. Yeah. They never acknowledged that they did a fake hashtag Me Too against me. They're never going to acknowledge that. They're clowns.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure people know it. Reminder that the right gets fighters and the left gets gaslighters for the establishment like Cenk Uygur. Just so it's hilarious to watch Crystal Ball. Oh, so Crystal Ball and I guess Sagar did a segment on this yesterday, and somehow they didn't bring up the force to vote as if they'd never heard of it. I didn't know that, but it makes sense now because they're anyway. It doesn't matter. All these internet DS. So everybody's trying. The DSA, the people at the DSA, which is a completely corrupt organization. Now, not the members. The members join in good faith, but the people who lead that organization are 100% corrupt. 100%. They're not who you think they are. They're getting paid by somebody. They got a phone call because they're not even doing the thing that they put in their own goddamn handbook. It's in their own handbook. It's right here. It says the House Pressure Campaign Guide. And what does it say? It says we need to now. This is 2019. We need now to fight back against the assault in an unshakable working class movement capable of forcing politicians to reject lobbyists' influence. Now is the time to be clear about our demands and pressure politicians to get on board. Pushing a floor vote in the House not only tests the political strength of the movement to make that happen, it also sends the bill to the Senate, calling the question there. Though we know Medicare for All will not become a reality under the Trump administration, a House floor vote is the best which side are you on political opportunity in 2019, and it sets the stage to make Medicare for All the decisive issue of 2020. They then pretended they didn't write that, the DSA, and their leadership was MIA during Force the Vote, except when they would come on Twitter to shit on Force the Vote, the thing that's in their own handbook. So now you know what's happened in the left. The corporate America has completely co-opted left organizations, which is why you haven't heard shit about Medicare for All the whole time Joe Biden has been president, and you haven't even heard anything about the public option. Nothing. They're not doing a fucking thing at the DSA except gaslighting you and taking your revolutionary progressive energy and sticking it right in the ass of a fucking corporation and a party. That's what the DSA is there to do, and I'm there to disabuse you of the idea that they're there to help you. Go ahead. Go ahead. Talk about what you would like to say.
Well, let's remember, Jimmy, when all this was happening, this was during the height of the pandemic, right? So what better time to have a vote for Medicare for All? And the argument against it was that, well, it's not going to pass anyway. We don't have the votes. Well, but the counter argument to that, and Breonna Joy Gray said this a lot, was that it politically, that's still a powerful message if you have all these lawmakers who are going to go on the record during a pandemic voting against giving everybody health care. So this would have been a huge opportunity. Even if it would have lost, it would have at least helped. I mean, you can't say this wouldn't have helped create some momentum for Medicare for All.
Of course it would have.
To have lawmakers voting it down. I mean, at a time when activism is so dormant in this country, something like this could have been a real spark, but they didn't want it.
Imagine, so right now, the Republicans are doing exactly what the squad should have been doing the last time that we had a speaker election. And you see what the media is doing? The media is totally focused on it. They had full coverage today on ABC. Not only CNN and MSNBC, not only cable, but on regular television, they were covering it. Could you imagine if we were talking for 3 days in a row about Medicare for All in the middle of a deadly pandemic? How, by the way, 70% of the country's on board for it? You imagine what that would have done? That would have been unbelievable. That would have been the most helpful thing that you could possibly think of for Medicare for All. And they said it was the exact opposite. They lied. Ryan Grimm lied. Cenk Uygur lied. MSNBC people with MSNBC contracts lied and are still lying to this day.
One of the demands, apparently, by these Republicans is to remove food stamps from a farm bill, right? So if these Republicans can use their leverage to demand a cut to social assistance, why can't progressives use their leverage to demand an increase in social assistance? That's what we're supposed to be about as progressives, but they denied that opportunity to themselves.
And they all voted for war. They're all war pigs, and I won't stop saying it. And that's an insult to pigs because pigs are nice people. This week, I presented my amendments to remove barriers to research on therapeutic potential of psychedelic substances. The first time I offered it, members laughed at me on the House floor. I got 91 votes. This time, more understood. Support surged to 140. We won't give up. That's how it works. Everybody knows. They're all pretending they don't know how anything works. Just like when David Sirota came on a show and pretended that Kevin McCarthy could become speaker. They're all pretending. They're all pretending, and because they all got the phone call. And I wonder if the phone call came from her or a donor high up in the Democratic Party who also funds the Young Turks. I wonder. But here's Kim Iverson, who used to be at the Hill, and she said it's amazing to see a handful of conservatives hold Kevin McCarthy's speakership dreams hostage the way progressives like AOC refuse to with Pelosi. And one more. Remember when the faux left assured the forced to vote was bad strategy and the left using their leverage would never work? Then the next 2 years, they spent more time bitching about Jimmy Dore than their elected politicians. Think they'll ever apologize? No, they won't. In fact, they're getting worse. Anything you'd like to say to close out this segment? And I just want to say it actually made me sad today when I realized that. Like, look at all, I'm watching the TV in my house and I'm like, shit, this is on channel 7. This is ABC, regular ABC television. They broke in from The View to talk about congressional insider politics. And I thought about, oh my God, the squad could have been doing this for 2 straight years. They could have been doing this for 2 straight years. They could have been making progressive policy ideas front and center. They could have been defunding the war machine. They could have been doing a million things. They did nothing except gaslight you and lie about activists like me. That's what the squad did. And that's what their minions did in the press. And that's what Brianna Joy Gray just revealed. And that's Bernie Sanders' ex-press secretary. Go ahead.
Yeah, Jimmy, listen, you took a lot of heat for advocating force the vote and for being uncompromising in that stance. And I'm hoping you're feeling validated today on that.
100%.
Not as if you needed the validation. But
I do.
But to see lawmakers actually using their leverage to extract concessions. The point of this, at least for me, is not to praise Republicans. It's to show what opportunities progressives abandoned, how they basically neutered themselves, and they attacked people who dared to ask them to use their power to push for something positive. We're asking for a floor vote for Medicare for all, which is the majority of the country supports, vast majority, all progressives support that. What could go wrong? And the fact that people could get attacked for daring to ask that elected lawmakers do what they campaigned on, which is use their power to challenge the establishment of the party. It speaks to where we're at, and hopefully if there's a silver lining here that progressives can learn from today. It's too bad they had to learn from right-wing Republicans how to use their own power and how to actually be effective progressive lawmakers, but that's where we're at.
They're not going to learn that, by the way. And the people who apologize for them, like the Young Turks and people with MSNBC contracts and Ryan Grimm at The Intercept, they're not going to stop. They're still doing it. I forgot to put together the segment making fun of Ryan Grimm because he's still pretending that he's not a complete tool and that everybody doesn't see through him. But now he's got a great job over at the, what's it called, Breaking Points with Crystal and Sagar. Those are the type of people they want to surround themselves with now because I guess they just want to be shit libs. I don't know what it is. I'm not a psychiatrist. Hey, maybe we should ask your dad, what's Crystal Ball and Sagar's core wound that makes them want to hang around with such a fucking obvious, transparent corporate shill who lies about activists while taking billionaire money? What does he take? 3 checks from billionaires? I think it's down to 2 checks from billionaires now. I'm not sure, but that's Ryan Grimm's. That's where it comes from. And that's what's happening over at Breaking Point. So I say, thank fucking God. They make me look so good. They make me look great on this. They make me look great on the coverage of Ukraine. There's such a huge lane that that's why this show does so much better than those other shows. And I say thank you to the audience for being able to see through all those other things, and you appreciate authenticity, which is what we strive to give you at this show. Any last words on this?
Hey, listen, I'm looking forward to seeing where this goes. So as we're broadcasting, McCarthy's lost, I think, 6 votes.
6.
So this is going to be exciting. We'll probably have more on this later in the week.
Yeah. Everybody, we're doing live stand-up comedy in Los Angeles in January and February in Los Angeles. And then we're going to Tempe, Palm Springs, Milwaukee, Minneapolis, Nashville. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for all those tickets and become a premium member while you're there.